I'm just going to give one more example. The Porta di Ripetta, very, very briefly. We know this beautiful, alas, gone monument from Alessandro Specchi, Giuseppe Vasi, and Piranesi. And they make explicit the hubbub that's happening at the Porto. Chiesa and Gambarini, and here are those other beautiful images. Now, they're sectioned through this, and again, this one has also been condensed. They've taken the entire flight of stairs and squished it into this little, again, I don't quite know why they did this. But they show us the conditions of the bed of the river. And what they show is something very interesting, and that is, as you all know, as a river flows, it meanders, and as it meanders, it carves away at the outside bank and it dumps alluvium on the inside bank. So every time it's making a move like this, it's digging away at the bank. It's also showing us that the activity of the boats themselves are helping to keep this side of the river where the boats land, helping to keep it clear because of their activity. They're actually churning the water as they come in and moving alluvium over. So it's very instructive in an unusual way. And just one more example, this is Ponte Rotto, where we had the millers complaining. And we see the ruins of the Ponte Subblicchio here and its location. The bridge is actually somewhere over here. This view is actually in this location. But again, the same general area and the precarious condition of the river at this point. In conclusion, one sentence. Oh, two, sorry. The Tiber River that we know through the beautiful 18th century vedute, like those of Giuseppe Vasi, who we honor here today, is but one aspect of Roma Visuale. Chiesa and Gambarini have provided us with a new lens to view Roma Invisibile, the invisible city. These provide a counterpoint to the Roma Visuale and an expansion of that. They literally offer us a kind of X-ray through the Tiber River that allows insights into its murky past and also into its place in cartographic history. Thank you.
We have time this morning for about 2 or 3 questions, so ask Katherine. And we'll have an opportunity later this afternoon, I think, to go back to some of the other excellent papers we've heard earlier.
Yes?
Yes, you described in the 18th century the polluted condition of the river, and can you hear me?
Yeah.
And you also referred on more than one occasion to fishermen. And I wondered if they were catching anything, and if so, what they were catching, if there was anything left to catch.
Yeah, they were catching, and you know, I haven't actually done very much research, but there are documents. They had these little platforms in the river that they rented, typically from the Camera Apostolica. There are documents that describe that. And they would change hands and they paid taxes, but what I don't honestly know what they were catching. But indeed they were catching fish, absolutely. Yes. Oh, and I should point out that the platforms were placed just downstream from the mouths of the sewer because that's where the fish would congregate. Yes?
I'm curious, you showed us, you said there was about 100 existing flood markers
yeah.
on the walls, and I assume there were more. Who erected those, and were they official or?
Actually, I'm trying to understand that very subject. Some of them, there are documents that say this was commissioned, but for the ones that on the Santa Maria Sopra Minerva, those were all paid for by the church. That church, for example, Pope Paul IV, there was a flood during his pontificate. He had been affiliated with that church, and his church honored him by putting up that plaque. So oftentimes It's clear who paid for them. If they're on the facade of a palace or a church, it's paid for typically by that palace owner or that congregation or the church or monastery. The ones after 1870, which all look alike, as anybody who's looked at them, those were provided, I'm not quite certain, but since they're all exactly alike, it seems to me that it would have been a spec kind of operation, and you could put it, you buy it and put it on your palace or your church, because they're not individual. The others are all individual, you know, they'll say, with individual inscriptions, very poetic, some of them rhyme in iambic pentameter. For those of you who read Latin, I had to be told that.
One
Yes?
more? Yes.
Can you speak to the methods that Gamberini and
Chiesa.
Yeah.
That guy.
Can you speak to the methods of how they actually measured the...
Yeah, they did soundings. And so it means you're in a boat or at the shore, depending on how big the space is, and you drop a weight. You know, you have your 0 point, and you drop a weight, and when it hits something on the bottom, you can measure the length of that piece of string. Typically, some kind of heavy string would hold the weight. And you put the weight on it so that it goes straight and pulls it down. And you would just keep doing that along the stretch. So it could take hundreds of soundings if they wanted to be, I mean, I'd want to be pretty darn careful if I'm in the, like at the Trionfale Bridge, to know that I'm accurately, they actually were very scientific in their approach. So it's done with a technique called sounding, but it's not the kind of sounding we do today where we can actually use, you know, sonar. So, yes?
I was wondering about the same question. There are some places where the sections of the river correspond with the little ferry lines that pass through.
With what?
And because the
he's saying that some of the section lines correspond with where the ferries go through. Yeah.
And where there's a wire or a rope connecting both sides of the river, and the boat can go back and forth. Because that guarantees you a section line and guarantees your stability on the water. Are there, I imagine, my question is, do they set up other similar systems?
Well, that's what I don't know yet, because only, there are about 20 sections on this map, maybe 22 total. And what I don't know yet, because I don't actually have a copy of the book to read in California College of the Arts. We don't have books like that in our library. So I haven't actually read the whole text, although I've read parts when I was able to use Vincent's copy. And so I don't know the whole extent of their work. Because they were doing sections outside the city as well, further north. And I don't, again, know whether they only utilized the sections where the ferries were already located, or whether they actually made their own lines, which is not that hard to do, to establish your own line across the river. So,
Ryan, thank you very, very much, Katherine.